Welcome, everyone. One of these days, we'll get that time down. Welcome to the City Council, City of West Plains City Council regular session meeting for Monday, May 1st, 2023 at 7:06 p.m. Please stand for the allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very much. Roll call, Lord. Thank you. Councilor Page,
Here.
Councilor Kendall,
Here.
Councilor Pippin, here, Councilor Sheldon,
President.
Mayor Linehan, here, and Councilors Martinez and Smith are excused this evening. Great, thank you, Lori. Next item is the consent agenda, and for tonight, we are removing item 5C. The resolution is it's not ready from the attorney's office. So that will definitely come back to us. So with that, we have the approval of the May 1st City Council agenda, and then the approval of April 17th City Council minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes that we need to be aware of? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move for approval of consent agenda.
No, second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Item 6 on our agenda is the public comment. This is the time that we wish anyone in the audience or online wanting to speak on anything not on the agenda. Lori, have you received? I have not received anything prior to tonight's meeting. Anyone online wishing to speak? And anyone in the hall wishing to speak? All right. Let the record show no public comment this evening. And then the next item on our agenda this evening is the presentation from the Washington County Family Justice Center, and I see we have Judy Willie and Linda Johnson. Community halls, please come on up. Well, good to see you, ladies. Thanks for being here. All right, good to see you both. Yeah, thanks for being here. So I know that we have a couple of slides in our packet, but I didn't know if there's anything else that we need to have. Gorgeous. Yeah, you do.
Chair. Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and councilors, and Andy, thank you for inviting us and allowing us to speak and present to you. We always meet every year with the mayors, and we have met with city councils in the past, but we decided this year that we were going to make it to every city council meeting and do our annual presentation. And it really has worked well for us. We're getting towards the end, and it's been received very well, and we like it because it makes you all hear us together and understand what we're doing. So I do want to thank you again for allowing us to be here. We are grateful, and that's a modest word, but we are really grateful for every city support of the Family Justice Center. We know that it is important, and we know what we do is important, and we know that we serve every city in this county. And there is, to be honest, within the city in this county that doesn't need Family Justice Center. And so we opened it in 2018. And it's a great grand opening, and we had every mayor that was, we had every mayor in front of the building with ribbon, and participating in the urban community was really a great picture of what this Family Justice Center means to the county. And so I do want to say that the one thing about Family Justice Center is we impact all of the cities, and it's a good thing that we do. And so we do have a board, 15 board members, and I always like to just let the cities know the type of board we have. I don't name any names on it. If you want to roster, I'm happy to give it to you. But I do think it's important that you understand that this board has I'm president of the Family Justice Center Board of Directors, and we have a judge, we have a DA, we have a representative from the sheriff's office, we have corporate businesses, several of those, we have representation. We have representation from the county, and we have representation from, and we have an elected, and we have representation from Tigard, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Sherwood, and of course, North Plains, and she is here with us tonight, Danielle. And she's one of our board members, and a great board member, by the way. And so we have a strong board that goes together, and every single board member is very, very much in support of our mission. And so again, I thank you for allowing us to come. And Rachel is going to our executive director, and she is going to tell us more about what happens every day in the center and the impact of that.
Good evening, council. Thank you again so much for having us. We really appreciate it. I believe in your packet, you received our annual report for 2022. So I just wanted to go over some of the highlights from our annual report. In 2022, it was the first year coming out of the pandemic where a majority of society had reopened. Kids had come back to school, a lot of workplaces had reopened, and we saw a big increase in the numbers of clients served. I think you can see in our packet that we saw almost a 300% increase in the number of visitors to the Family Justice Center in 2022. That is both a good and a bad thing in our line of work. It is not good that many people in our community needed the support of the Family Justice Center. But what I like to say and what I like to think is that at least they knew where to go. The other reality is that coming out of the pandemic, the rates of violence and abuse increased, not just in our community, but across the country. Unfortunately, however, in Washington County, we are at an almost all-time high in homicides, and the majority of those are domestic violence homicides. And unfortunately, we've seen that continue here in 2023. I think we can all think of some of the cases that have happened. And all of those are absolute tragedies. And I think about those as we do our work. And so what that told us is that we needed to ensure that as rates were increasing, we were there to meet that demand. And so the other component of our increase in numbers is also the increase in the services that we offered. We developed new programs and brought in new partners. We started 2022, that's right, with 13 partners on site, and we have now just crossed into 19 partners. So we're making sure that the services that are being asked for are on site, even if they're new services or they're emerging issues. Emerging issues is something that we talk about at our monthly meeting every month in the center to ensure that there isn't something that is going unmet for the survivors that come through. Additionally, we increased outreach, and part of that was through our cities and actually came from our initial meetings with our cities in 2021. All of the cities wanted to know how we could help, and Mayor, you were one of those cities that really stepped up and started putting FJC's information in our either utility bills or city newsletters. And that was a really big help. One of the things that's really challenging about the Family Justice Center that takes a while to explain when people say, how did people hear about you? And I say, well, that's really complicated because if you try to look up our information, that can potentially put you in danger. If you are somebody that's experiencing the things that you would need services from the Family Justice Center from, it can be really difficult and a big barrier to seek out information about the Family Justice Center. And so what our cities did was say, well, let's make that easy. Let's put our information in the background of every home inside of our cities. That way people don't have to try to look for that information and potentially put themselves in danger. It just exists in the background of our community. It becomes a staple of where you can go if you need help. And in fact, that bore results for North Plains. In North Plains, we saw a 518% increase in the number of individuals and services that were provided to citizens in North Plains. That is a big deal, not because we saw a 518% increase in services needed in North Plains, but we saw that the people that needed it knew where to go. And they had a safe way of accessing that information. When a city does that, when you guys do your proclamations, when you put out information about Family Justice Center, when you engage with your community in this way, you signal to your citizens that this is safe, that they are seen in their community, that they're believed in their community, and that their community is willing to help them. And that is a huge deal for survivors. And I would just highly encourage you to continue to do that because it makes a really big difference. In fact, it was our rural communities that we did some pretty intentional outreach over 2022, because that's where we know there are an increased need for services and a decreased ability to access those services. And so over 2022, we saw a 26% increase in the ability in folks coming from rural areas, which was really great. And so we're going to continue working on that, and we're going to continue unlocking what is the biggest barrier, which is transportation for our individuals. As you can see, overall in 2022, we provided over 4,500 survivors with over 8,300 services. And so what we always like to see is that there are more services that people are accessing than there are individuals that are accessing them. That means that having all of our agencies located at the Family Justice Center makes a difference, because instead of individuals having to go to 19 different locations, they can go to one location and they can access 19 different agencies, which makes a really big difference in what we call breaking the cycle. So you have everything in one location in order to make that possible. In fact, I was just at the front desk on Friday covering a lunch, and one of the individuals came in and they've been there a couple times. And they said to me, you know, this place has become like my home away from home. I wish I didn't have to have this be that way, but anytime I need anything, you guys are always safe and you guys are always there. And that's kind of the point of the Family Justice Center, is we can be that safe space for survivors and their children, and they know that they can always come back anytime they need it, even if they want to come back just for the community opportunity. Playing off of that, over 2022, we increased the amount of community outreach that we were doing and the amount of events. You can see some of the pictures, which I really love. We had 2 big community events, such as the Gathering of Hope for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And then we called it Voices of Hope this year, but last year it was our Survivor Art Gallery. And that was for our month of April, which has 3 different awareness months. We also did Thanksgiving boxes that we were able to give away to over 200 families, which was absolutely fantastic. We did our annual holiday shop where parents can come in and shop for their children, and then they get to wrap up the gifts and say they're from whoever, but really the parents get to go shopping for their kids, which is a big piece of dignity for those individuals. And then also we did a really big diaper distribution. We distributed over 50,000 diapers in the fall, which was unbelievable, and I had no idea what I was saying yes to. My staff told me I need to double check things before I say yes from now on, but the amazing thing was in 3 months, we gave away all those diapers. I had no idea what a big need diapers were. And we are back to buying diapers after 50,000, we are clean out and now we're buying them again. So that has become something that we know that we need a lot of in Washington County. And so overall, we had a fantastic year. Like I said, if the numbers were going to increase, I'm glad that we saw our numbers increase. I'm glad that people knew where to go. And I'm really grateful for all of our partners and all of the support, both outside of our center and inside of our center, to make all of our services possible. If you guys have any questions about the report or any questions about the Family Justice Center, we would be happy to answer those.
I don't have any questions, but just, I'm glad that you're there. I'm glad that you're in our community and all of the communities. I think the work that you do, and it just speaks for itself. I was shocked when I looked at the handout that was provided to us and looked at the number on several of your numbers in here. But, and again, I'm with you, you know, like, you don't want to see them that high, but it's again a great place for people to get the help. And I think that the outreach that you have been doing in the last couple of years has been very significant, and it obviously shows. But I'm glad we could be a part of the team.
You guys really have been, so thank you very much. Every time, just even all the time, Mayor will email me out of nowhere from time to time and just say, hey, is there anything more that we could be doing? Is there any additional support that you need? So you guys have always just been incredible partners. And I just really appreciate it. And not only me appreciate it, the city of North Plains, the people that live here, they are benefiting from that because you do that. So thank you.
And I do want to recognize Danielle, and I really want to say thank you very much for stepping up and being part of the board. I know that I've heard just your valuable input has been incredible, and I'm glad that you are where you are and doing what you do. Thank you.
You might want to announce that Danielle is going to be going to our the national conference next week,
Oh, nice.
and in San Diego, and it's a great experience for her to get to do this. And you raised her hand, and that's great. So she's gonna have a great time.
I also know that you have a diamonds coming out. This is a good time to plug that too.
Of course.
Good.
Yeah, we do. It's on June 3rd, and it is it's our sixth year of doing it. We started it in 2017, even before we opened the doors. We had this event. And it's an event that yes, it's a fundraiser for FJC, and we've increased the dollars every year because of it. But it is also a awareness raiser for us. And we started out with that mission in the very beginning. We wanted people to know about the Family Justice Center. And last year we had the biggest crowd ever, and we just, people know. And there are other small fundraisers during the year that has grown, and a lot of it's because people tell people. And so this is at the Hillsborough Elks on June 3rd, and it starts at 5:30, and it will run from 5:30 till about 9:30, and live music afterwards, and lots of fun, lots of auctions and opportunities that just have a great time. So if you don't have anything to do, please.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, speaking of like awareness, I just put it onto my calendar. My wife sent me an invite. I forgot to say, accept. So I'm like, oops, but I do that right now.
What about the new building and that partnership as well?
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna end with that. So again, with city support, you guys submitted a letter of support for us in our ask to the state legislature. for lottery bond funds to finish the Family Peace Center. We are on track and on timeline to acquire a facility. And then we will start looking towards doing construction for that facility. I will be down in Salem testifying on Friday for support of that bill, but that will be the last step before they choose whether or not to award those funds. And then we are also on track to open the new facility to begin providing services in April of 2026. So there's a ton of behind the scenes work that you guys can mark your calendars, because there will be another ribbon cutting in April of 2026. Oh, for our additional partners. For our additional partners, we have quite a few, but everybody that's currently at the Family Justice Center will be at our new facility. We will also be bringing in a fully functional CARES Northwest, which will effectively bring a full suite of child abuse intervention and prevention, and also treatment to Washington County. Will be the first child abuse dedicated organization that Washington County has, which is fantastic, because currently CARES Northwest is located in Northeast Portland, and they serve more children from Washington County than they do Multnomah County. And so Washington County families are in some places traveling an hour and a half each way to go to those appointments. And so they will be coming out and being located in the Family Peace Center, and we'll also be rounding out a whole, I like to say a whole arm of our organization will be for children. And so the Family Peace Center will move from mostly adult focused Family Justice Center and mostly intervention programs to children, adults, and older adults. So we'll have the full spectrum of the lifespan, and we'll focus on 4 things, which is intervention, which is what we do now, but then also prevention, healing, and hope in our new center.
Any questions or comments? Councilor,
I'll just add in thank you for all the wonderful work you do within my county, and for my employer always sponsors a global month of good during the month of April, and some of my peers were scratching their heads with, gosh, I don't know any organizations to nominate to possibly receive free money. And I put together a list of some organizations I worked with in the past, and that you on my list if they know the impact that you have in this community and in Washington County. So hopefully I can get the nomination comes through, but just know that all of your hard work does not go unnoticed. So thank you so much.
That's really kind of you. Thank you so much for saying that and doing that.
any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned you're testifying to the legislature. What bill is that exactly?
That is House Bill 5030, which is under the capital construction in the Ways and Means Committee.
I'm guessing if any of us wanted to submit testimony for it or verbal in favor of that, that would be encouraged.
You can, yes. If you go to the Oregon legislature, you can look up that bill and you can testify by any way that you would like. You can also testify against. Thank you very much.
Andrew?
Oh, well, this is just me. My only question was going to be if in board meetings, does Danielle use the microphone, but I won't go there.
I have a very understood voice.
Just thanks for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. All right, before we jump into item 8A, I wanted to turn this over to Andy. I know Andy wants to introduce that.
Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch this before, but I did want to say our new public works director, third day in, is here in the audience, Dustin Lucanati. Lucanati, okay, I'll get there. And I don't know, Dustin, if you wanted to take a minute or so to just say hi, but we got 5 of 7 counselors here tonight. A couple are out of town, but I just figured you're here. Be good to introduce yourself.
Good evening. Wasn't expecting to speak tonight, so.
All of this expense. Well, I think you got your feet wet a little bit though, right, in the last couple of days? Well, we're glad you're here. If maybe if you just give us a real high level, where'd you come from and, yeah.
Well, I'm fairly new to the Oregon area. I came from the Kansas City Metro, recently for the last 6 months. Before coming here, I was working with Clean Water Services, so I have a little bit of experience with what Clean Water Services had to offer. But I have a extensive construction background, where more or less for the last 20 years, I was 2 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, equipment operator, supervisor. And I spent some time after the Army, actually my degree is in elementary education, so I spent some time as a teacher. So I went from Army construction teacher, and then I went back into public service and worked with various municipalities, working with public works and as construction inspector, and I have a lot of background with the water lines and streets and preservation, reconstruction, capital projects, and I have a lot to offer the city of North Plains to help, get where we need to go.
Any questions or comments for Dustin?
I just welcome aboard. It's, you're gonna be drinking from a fire hose for a while. There's no doubt, even though we're a small community, we obviously are moving at a pretty good pace, so. And then, you get to know the intricacies and things of our system, but it's a good place to be, so I think, pretty much it's a place you can stay, and hopefully, so, and apply that knowledge.
Thank you. I'm really excited to hear it so far. It's working out really good.
All right. Well, welcome. So we're really excited.
Sorry to put you on the spot, so
Yeah.
catch you tomorrow.
So you've been a teacher, you know about that though, right? Shoot from the hip,
Oh, obviously.
occasionally, yeah. Good. All right, that's great. Thanks again. All right, moving on to the next item, we have 8A, the ordinance number 488, TA 23-038, first reading, it's the downtown improvement plan code amendments. Lori, do you have something to read? I do. Did I catch you off guard with that? No. Go right ahead. The North Plains City Council will conduct a legislative public hearing regarding file TA 23-038, the Downtown Improvement Plan Code Amendments. The order of business will be as follows. The mayor will open the public hearing and request the staff report. The council may ask questions at any time during the public hearing. Any written correspondence submitted on behalf of this item will be orally presented, including the individual's name and address. The public will be invited to provide oral and written testimony on this item. Additional staff comments will then be presented. The mayor will call for council comments and discussion. The mayor will close the public hearing or continue the hearing to a specific date and time. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the proceeding and must provide their name and full correct mailing address, or if preferred, their email address. Parties will be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code and state law. The city municipal code zoning and development standards specify applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact, or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes applies to the proposed filed. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the public hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. All right, thank you, Lori. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing at 7:35.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a staff presentation from our downtown consultant that's been working on this plan for the last little while. Yeah, Matt Hasty from MIG, and just a reminder, they're coming toward the end of their work, perhaps the final public meeting after a state TGM grant that helped provide the resources for this effort. So, Matt, you have a PowerPoint, correct?
I do, and you all have it loaded up, or I have it on a thumb drive,
I got it right here.
and you're gonna be okay. Right, close enough.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna walk through a presentation. It's kind of an abbreviated version of what I presented at the work session to you all, or to everybody who was here then. So I'll go through that probably fairly quickly because most of you submitted before. And then happy to take any questions when the time comes for that. So go ahead. So I'll just talk about kind of the process we went through, and the goals of the process, the kind of the summary of the recommendations, and then I'll talk about, and that's all associated with the downtown improvement plan, and then I'll talk about the proposed development code amendments as well. And again, hit most of those at a fairly high level. And I would say, you know, exactly questions for clarification, and then let it go on. And that will all make sense. So just kind of the purpose of the project really is to increase the economic vitality of the downtown and community livability. There are a number of sort of overarching objectives supporting existing businesses as well as future businesses in the downtown, facilitating new development, both as well as the use of existing sites and buildings, enhancing safety for all modes of travel, whether people are walking, bicycling, driving downtown, and just creating more welcoming downtown along your main street or commercial street. And I know there's a main street downtown, but mostly I'm talking about commercial. And as Andy noted, this project was funded through a grant from the state Transportation and Growth Management Program, which is a joint program of departments of transportation and operations development. So this is a little bit of a repeat of some of the goals I just talked about. You know, some of the things I'll just sort of emphasize, you know, again, in ESC with the feel of the downtown, providing or promoting some different housing choices for folks in the community. Talk about that a little more later, and creating an implementable plan. So there's a lot of sort of focus on identifying actions to implement the plan, and I'll talk about some of those in a moment. Next one. So as Andy said, we've been at this for a little while. I think about it's been quite a few years, probably a year and 3/4 maybe. Went through several phases in the process. The first was to just do sort of a general inventory of conditions in downtown, as well as a market study. You know, what are the what is there a market for in terms of both within the city of North Plains as well as the surrounding market area. So I talked about that. Looked at some different opportunity sites within the downtown. I talked about promoting new uses and potential reuse of existing buildings or uses. So looking at the opportunity for those, we identified some conceptual options or alternatives for a number of those sites. And then ultimately came up with a set of recommendations, both again focused on how to support existing and future businesses, as well as some potential changes to your development code related to what types of uses are allowed in the town, some particular standards related to new development, as well as standards for future transportation improvements downtown. And so that's all then got rolled up into the downtown improvement plan, which is what we've got before you, along with the development for the next. So we did a number of things during the process to try to connect with both folks who own businesses and property downtown, as well as the people in generally. So I'll mention that we had a project advisory committee that met 5 times. The mayor was on that committee, appreciated her participation in that, and a number of other folks, particularly some downtown business owners, representatives from the library, also from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, as well as planning commission and council, and then just other folks who live in the community. So they met 5 times, gave us guidance kind of throughout the process. And then we did a couple of things to try to engage people more broadly. We conducted a lot of this process during the pandemic, so we did a certain amount of work online. So we had an initial online survey. Got really good participation in that. I'd say particularly for a community this size, I was pretty impressed by how many folks participated in that. It was awesome. And then we did a second survey coupled with an in-person open house. I think we had probably 50 or 60 people at that open house. It's great to see people come out for that. Yeah, I think a couple of food trucks there, and it was in one of the warehouses downtown. So it was great to have people come downtown to talk to us and look at some of the things we were doing. There's a photo from that. And then we also had kind of a project email list where we notified folks about this, use your website to let people know about things, had some flyers and book cards to let people know about the surveys and meetings. So just kind of did as much as we could to pull people into the process and get their feedback as we go on. So just kind of 5 basic recommendations, and then within those recommendations, there are a number of more specific recommended implementation actions and strategies. So I'm not going to read through all these because the next set of slides are going to kind of repeat these and provide a little more specificity about some of the individual actions and strategies. So the next one. And I'll also note that the actions are organized by kind of time period. So short term, kind of current 2 years, medium term 3 to 5, longer term kind of beyond that 5 to 10 years. So this plan could well serve you for longer than that, but we try to kind of keep the actions in those kind of time periods. So first one, retain and grow small businesses downtown and attract new businesses. So again, here the focus really is on connecting either the people who have businesses or people who might want to locate downtown, and attracting those types of folks, producing materials to help them do that, and then ultimately putting in place some of the structures that are going to support those businesses. So a Main Street program, a potential business district association that, along with your economic development committee, can be to help support somebody forward. One idea is to establish a storefront improvement program that provides grants to folks to improve their storefronts. Supporting micro enterprise and startup businesses, and as you and business owners are identifying concepts for new businesses, it's just helping move those forward. So also fostering a favorable environment for private investment and adaptive reuse. So a couple of these things we've really already been doing as part of this process. So the short-term actions, inventorying properties, and connecting with property owners, that's already been going on as part of this process. And then making sure that your zoning code is supportive of and allows the types of things you want to do downtown. So that's part of what those development code amendments are about, is implementing that short-term action. Ultimately, as I said, we identified some potential concepts for reuse or redevelopment of specific sites downtown. So potentially moving forward with those, obviously in cooperation and coordination with the property owners downtown. You own some of those properties, some of those other properties are privately owned, so really important to continue to coordinate with those folks. And to the extent there are available properties that make sense for future development or redevelopment, work with those property owners to market those if they aren't something that the property owner wants to kind of do themselves. Ultimately, you can look at acquiring some of those key opportunity sites through your urban renewal program, or other programs. And really, you're looking for developments that are going to be catalysts for future growth and vitality in the downtown. So establishing a civic center and making sure that it incorporates gathering spaces for folks. So, you've already been looking at expanding the library as well as some potential needs to expand City Hall. So we looked at a number of concepts for doing that, some shorter term concepts that would use the existing site where City Hall and library are located, some longer term concepts that could potentially incorporate some of the properties across the street. So ultimately looking at that and really, as you're doing that, making sure that there are spaces within that space for people to gather and get together when they're downtown, creating those welcoming spaces for folks. So long term, there's the potential opportunity for developing and redeveloping the city-owned property. 12th Valley Fire and Rescue, currently located next to the City Hall site. They haven't indicated any desire to move, but if they were to do that, that's a pretty important potential site. So it's just kind of keeping in coordination and communication with them. And if they do look at shifting their facilities, being kind of ready to help capitalize on that. Building appropriate infrastructure, as I said, to make sure that people who are traveling kind of by all modes and do that safely and comfortably downtown. So in a couple of slides here, I think I've got some images of some proposed standards for future improvements to commercial, a couple of different sections of commercial that we'll take a look at. So ultimately adopting those new street standards. So at the time that you have the resources or property owners have the resources to make improvements to those streets, you've got some standards in place. And we'll talk about those a little bit more in a moment. As that happens, there's some opportunities to put in additional street furnishing. So identify, okay, what's the style of those street furnishings and amenities that you want to see. Another action item, just enhancing wayfinding generally between Glencoe Road and the downtown and other parts of the community and the downtown, just to make sure it's really apparent and easy for people to get here and know how to get here. And as you look at potential improvements at the intersection of Glencoe and commercial, thinking about some additional kind of wayfinding or public art at that intersection. And then again, when resources are available, rebuilding commercial streets to those new street standards. One of the things we recommend as part of that process is undergrounding utilities. That is can be a fairly expensive thing to do, particularly if you're doing it piecemeal. It's more cost effective if you're doing it all at one time and you are rebuilding the street. So that's something to look at. And then we know and understand that right now there's a fair bit of traffic that needs to use commercial to get to the industrial uses on the west side of downtown. So kind of recognizing that ultimately the goal would be to not have as much truck traffic going through your downtown, but to accommodate it, the state need to do that, and then look for ways to reduce that truck traffic, which is something you've been doing already. So it's kind of look down that aspect. Next one. And then the last one is talks about creating opportunities for future housing. So really the main point around that is that more housing means more customers for downtown businesses. So looking at some opportunities within or in fairly close proximity to the downtown to allow for housing that's going to support downtown businesses. And so some of the development code amendments are related to that. So, that may not be, the market may not be ready for that right now, but as the market is ready, take a look at that. There are some things you could think about doing as a city to incentivize some of those things, particularly around things like density or parking or other related incentives. And then, again, when the market is ready for that and folks come in and are interested in doing that, work with them to support that kind of development if that's something that's going to help support the vitality of your downtown. We wouldn't expect the city wouldn't be the developer in those cases, but you could partner with and support that kind of development. So And that's another kind of longer term recommendation. So now I'll talk about the development code amendments that are proposed. I'll go through this again at a fairly brief high level. So not too many changes in terms of the types of businesses or uses that are allowed in your downtown, but a few things. So one, I talked about allowing for housing. So right now, you don't allow for housing on the ground floor of any developments within your C1 zone. We think that's appropriate along commercial street to not allow for those ground floor residential uses. But on other streets, Tyburn or some of the north-south streets, that is something we think you could allow for those ground floor residential uses as well. You would still allow for commercial uses on the ground floor, so it's not like you require ground floor residential, but you would allow for it technically. And I think that would make sense. Again, not on commercial itself, but on some of the other streets in the C1. And then this was sort of a response, I think, to some of the discussion we had with the planning commission earlier in the process. Ultimately, the planning commission recommended approval of all this, so I'm not going into too much detail about this one. But it really was just kind of related to that recommendation about allowing for ground floor residential uses possible in the street. So next one. There are a few uses in addition to ground floor commercial that we would recommend allowing for within the C1 zone generally. So daycare facilities is one. That's really an important use for people who potentially work downtown, people in the community in general. We think it's a use that would be compatible with other uses downtown. Somebody at one of the meetings asked about how does that kind of sync up with eating and drinking establishments. For the most part, they're kind of happening at different times of the day. So I would say from my perspective, they're not compatible uses in that way. And they also potentially, bring people into downtown to pick up their kids. And then they get to see what the downtown has to offer in terms of businesses down there. Prohibiting drive-through businesses, just given the scale of the downtown and the emphasis on kind of safe, particularly pedestrian travel within downtown. That's something we wouldn't recommend allowing downtown, as well as really large scale retail uses, so over 30,000 square feet. That might be appropriate in a lot of areas, but given the, again, sort of the size and scale of your downtown, we would not recommend allowing uses that large with large format commercial uses in the downtown. So those are just a few proposed changes to the allowed uses in the C1 zone, which is essentially the primary commercial zone downtown. We are recommending some proposed new design standards. And these are really kind of all about making sure you get kind of a minimum at least level of architectural design that's providing visual interest. You're avoiding kind of big blank walls. So just a few things I'll note here, emphasizing the entrances to the buildings. There's some different ways you can do that. And there's some options for doing that within the development code standards, requiring that the street facing facades or faces of the buildings have a certain amount of window coverage. So you get that kind of transparency between people inside the building and out on the street. So providing some, and we tend to have, and the recommendation is for a higher percentage of windows and foliage on the ground floor than the upper floor. Requiring weather protection along commercial street, not on all streets in the downtown, but along commercial streets. So some kind of awning for weather protection, just to make it, again, kind of more hospitable when it's raining or when it's really hot and sunny. And there are some specific standards for kind of materials that could be used for that. Mostly to make sure that they're durable, they're not going to kind of fade or age too much. And then, as I said, you're trying to avoid sort of big blank flat walls, so requiring that there's some change in the depth of those walls. That's what seen by articulation here.
And then there are some other standards around just providing some options that add architectural kind of difference and variety within those. And it's kind of a menu-based approach, so requiring somebody to do at least 2 or 3 of those things to make sure that there's some architectural variety in what the buildings look like. And there are some recommended prohibitions on certain types of materials that we don't think kind of fit in with the look and feel over downtown as it is now. Excellent. We did have some discussion about requiring awnings. So this kind of talks about when we met with the Lisa Planning Commission. I can remember we all talked about that. So we talked about kind of the benefits from staff and consultants perspective around that. I really kind of already talked about this, making sure that the material is durable. So kind of from a staff and consultant perspective, we're still recommending that that be something that you would require for new uses downtown. This doesn't require people who already have buildings to go back and add them. All of these requirements really are for new users. So that's, I should have admitted that out earlier. These don't apply that, you're not gonna like make somebody go back and do all these things in the existing building. But if they're developing a new use or substantially increasing the size of the existing use, that's the needs requirement. So you kind of get into it. The next one. Another recommendation is for just the block within the first block west of Main Street, to not allow new heavy industrial uses in that area. Still allow any existing uses of that type there. You can still allow those uses west of that. But just given that that's kind of the start of your commercial section of your downtown, the recommendation is not to allow new heavy industrial uses just on that one block west of Main Street there. And then off-street parking wouldn't be a set of development code amendments if we didn't have some suggested changes to your parking requirements, which always generate plenty of conversation. Pretty limited recommended changes. They're really about just reducing some of the minimum amounts of parking that we require for just these specific uses. We tend to look at a lot of development codes around the state, and when we're looking at those codes, we tend to look at required parking standards and see if there's something in line with best practices and what other jurisdictions of your size tend to require. And the goal really here, we know people need park, and we know you need parking spaces for businesses downtown. But at the same time, you don't want to kind of overdo it, frankly, because you want a good fabric of buildings downtown as well along Commercial Street. So the desire here really is that, and you don't want to create barriers to a business being able to come in and financially feasibly develop a business. So there's just a few targeted reductions that we're suggesting related to, again, minimum requirements. Somebody could provide more parking if they wanted. This is about what we require of them. So for retail stores, medical, dentist clinics, eating and drinking establishments, and motels. So again, trying to create that vibrant sort of scale downtown and not having too much in the area to provide parking. The next slide, I got a little graphic, real simple one that kind of gives you a sense of why we suggested reducing requirements for one use in particular, one of these uses in particular. So next one. This just kind of shows you what your current standard would require. So right now for eating and drinking establishments, you require 1 space per 100 square feet of gross floor area. You kind of think about how much square footage is taken up by parking spaces, as well as the drive aisles or the circulation to get you in and out of those parking spaces. This is kind of what you'd end up with on a site downtown. You'd only end up with about 20% of the lot devoted to the building, and almost 80% of it would be devoted to parking. And again, we just don't think that's really what you want to try to create downtown, and hence the recommendation to reduce the off-street parking requirements, particularly for that type of use, but for a number of other uses, again, just to avoid that and to be in line with sort of best practices around the state. So this is kind of quick, because when we talked about this previously, there was some question about we, we want to have parking, it's going to really limit it unnecessarily. So that was a just visual illustration of that. So that might be my last slide. Let's see. That's it. So hopefully I didn't go into too much detail. Thank you for your attention. And happy to answer questions whenever that time comes. I'll see it coming up over the best part. I don't know, have people online.
Councilor Page.
So the truck traffic for that, most of the truck traffic is due to the heavy industrial that's to the west of Main Street. Commercial is kind of bisected. Is it possible, because we're gonna do some fancy parking there with, instead of being flat against or horizontal parking, we're gonna go to vertical. Is it possible to limit the truck usage at a certain rate for that part of the street instead of being a whole street? To encourage trucks to not have to use that, plus I'll have to fix the issue on the Granco and commercial.
That is a good question. I don't know sort of I don't know enough about the rules around actually not allowing trucks to use certain streets even. It certainly can limit trucks for structural reasons, over a bridge, overpass that where the structure cannot accommodate trucks of a certain size. You can certainly encourage trucks to use other streets. You can identify preferred routes for trucks to use rather than coming all the way along Commercial Street. Whether or not you can actually prohibit them from using that street, that I'm a little less sure of. And so I think our recommendation is to do what you can sort of within, state rules, state and federal rules to keep traffic as much as you can from using the main part of Commercial Street there, but they do need to ultimately access the west end
Right.
or the area west of downtown. So is that?
Yeah, oh, that was true. I was wondering if it's been looked at, it sounds like it's not allowed, or you're just not sure?
I'm not sure if you can actually prohibit trucks over a certain size from using a public roadway like that. Again, I don't think you can, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
It wasn't one of the things that we recommended, because I don't know if it's within the purview.
So it wouldn't be the whole commercial, just from Main,
Yeah, and it's
it
not
depends on-
something that would really, we were looking at the things in your development code. It's not something that would be in your development code. It would be more of kind of a municipal ordinance kind of thing. So I think we could do a little research on that as a follow-up and tell you, but it wouldn't end up being a thing in your development code. I think it would sort of fall within the more general recommendation about trying to limit end of the truck traffic from using that section of Commercial Street. So yeah, I don't have a complete answer for you on that one.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from council? Anyone online have any comments or questions? The record shows them online as well. So I've seen this a few times and also participated in the discussion. So a lot of my questions and concerns have already been addressed. Thank you very much. All right, at this time I'll go ahead and host public hearing at 8:04. All right. So next step on this, we don't have a sample motion, but it is up for first reading of the ordinance. Correct? Following the process. Okay.
I'll move to approve first reading of ordinance number 488, ordinance City Council of the City of North Plains, implementing an amendment to the text of the zoning and development regarding development in the C1 zone within the city's downtown core.
I will second the first reading of ordinance 488 without reading the rest of it.
By title only.
By title.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 488 by title only. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Hearing none. Motion carried. Ordinance, for the record, ordinance number 488 is an ordinance of the city council of the city of North Plains, Oregon, implementing an amendment to text of the zoning and development code regarding development in the C1 zone within the city of downtown core. All right, thank you. And thanks again, Matt, for you and your team and everyone. I know you spent the last almost 2 years putting all this together, and you've had some really great feedback from not just from the lead and staff and the community, but also the community and the people came out. So it was nice to, it was really, I think it was a good exercise, and I'm really looking forward to some of that growing fruit and really this growing. So thank you again. Item number 9 on our agenda is new business. Nothing reported, but just want to put it out there for the council. Also, item number 10, unfinished business. Anything worth noting? All right. Item 11A is our city manager report. Andy?
Nothing new from a lot of the highlights that I hit on Friday in the email. I would have introduced Dustin and I already did that part, so yeah, but happy to answer any questions from Friday or from today.
Councilors, any questions, comments for Andy on his report from Friday or within the packet? Any council reports?
Oh, actually, one thing, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yes. This would have showed up on Friday. Public Works crew, I want to commend them. They were out, a couple of them were out late last night looking at a leak, and they spent most of this morning in Ridgeview Place repairing that, kind of all hands on deck, but they made pretty quick work of it and did a great job.
Yeah. And
So if you heard a lot, if you're in that neighborhood, you heard a lot of noise for about 4 hours this morning. That's what that would have been. Yeah.
And also, congratulations to Javier. I know that was pretty awesome. I know that you made that part of your report. But if you all see him around town, please make sure that you extend the congratulatory, high five or something. I know he's worked really, really hard on that certification. So, any council reports?
I was,
You want the library report?
yeah, I was at the library board the last, is Wednesday or Thursday, they changed the date on it. I think it's Thursday, I'm not sure.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah. They had some new members there and they get to know each other. They're gonna plan to do a little get to know you luncheon or something coming up, which is a good idea, especially when you have new people. So we may get invited to that. The main concern was about the budget coming. There's some less money given from the county to libraries. And they're still kind of up in the air what the budget's gonna look like with or without the levy being passed. So that was just the main concern. Basically, the message I gave them was if the levy's not passed, there'll be less money. If it is passed, there'll be more. So they tend to receive that pretty well. Robin's done a pretty good job with her budget of putting some money that's not been spent away. So that should help smooth out any kind of issues she has coming forward. But that was pretty much the library board meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. I attended the planning commission and I think we've gone over that pretty well. We looked at this plan, but nothing really to report there. I was at the LOC conference in Seaside last week. It's a great networking opportunity, but also they have some pretty good sessions on civility disagreements. We talked a little bit about, some of the other opportunities that were there were discussions on homelessness, of course, attended a class on just building an equitable and inclusive cities and, something else that I'd like to look into a little bit more as we move forward for the future is a climate action plan. As we, extend our urban growth boundary, fingers crossed that gets approved and that sort of thing, but I still think it's something that we might want to talk about, in the future. And then, I believe Councilor Smith brought this up maybe the last meeting or the meeting before, just kind of about a civics 101 for the community, more and more, especially since we go through this levy exercise. It's just becoming more and more apparent to me that people don't understand how a city's budget works. And even though we invite them to come to the budget committee meeting or volunteer for the budget committee, and no matter how, I mean, I could talk till I'm blue in the face, but it's really apparent to me just how a lot of people just don't understand how it works. And so maybe if we do a civic 101, that will be high on the list. So people can understand where the money comes from and where it goes, especially.
Might I suggest that maybe doing something at the local elementary school for sixth graders on the way out is a quick civics lesson, like a high level, nothing that's nitty-gritty.
Yeah,
Start young, let them build their curiosity.
I think that,
I'll send them that.
I think that's a great idea. Absolutely, absolutely. It's needed, it's definitely needed. All right, just looking at the calendar, for future meetings, everyone set for May, if there's any changes, I'm sure you'll speak up. Any other comments or questions from council before I give you back the day?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
on the 10th of May, we have a conflict that night with turkey appreciation within the county, and I think that's more there than that night. Do you want to fill my spot, or will Steve be there, or does any council want
So,
to have another meeting that they would like to go to?
Let me check my schedule.
Did you?
James Sanchez.
Oh, okay.
And that's,
That's
yeah, my wife's in San Diego, so that'd be a good babysitter. Very good.
Let me, Council Kendall, let me look at my schedule.
Whoever takes that up, you'll get to hear the urban growth boundary expansion. Topic. The planning commission hearing.
I'll babysit for Councilor Page's children. Yeah, on that. Also, I know this Wednesday, we have a budget meeting at 6 o'clock. We also, have an invitation to the Washington County proposed, budget special, meeting for elected officials, and Councilor, Sheldon and I briefly chatted about this, and thought it might be a really, important for, someone on council to attend that meeting on Wednesday evening. And you don't have to make a decision on, on the record, but we can certainly talk about it after the meeting, so if we could stick around for a minute or two, just to see how we might handle that, because I think it would be a really important, piece for somebody on the council to be at that meeting. Just to, and it's just for electeds in the county, so,
Is this Wednesday?
yes, it is.
Wednesday, the 8th starts at
6 to 8, and there is food and light refreshments begins at 5:30.
Is it that?
It is at the multi-purpose room, Hillsborough. 155 I can forward this to you, so,
Or maybe it's like that.
all right.
I guess not.
And did everybody that signed up for the urban renewal Oh, thank you.
thing online. Did you all get your reminder email?
Yeah.
Russ, did you get one?
If
If you didn't, let me know and I can forward, because I got it since I signed you all up, so I can forward it, and it will be recorded, so those of you that didn't sign up.
That's, yeah,
We'll have it available, I think it's like 2 weeks after.
yeah, so that's Thursday, May 4th from 6 to 8.
Yeah, and it's
Through the
only
League
on
of
Zoom,
Ordinance.
right?
Yeah, and it's all virtual.
So that, you know, I don't see. it.
All right. All right, anything else, councilors? Andy? Karen, anything else to do today? I'll go ahead and close the city council meeting at 8:16. Thank you all. So,